What are some of the biggest mistakes you see students make in a hackathon?
Oh, what I've seen happen at hackathon projects, they'll try to vibe code it out for an hour and it won't work and the prompts aren't getting any better. So they will revert to a commit from an hour ago and just start vibing again. Maybe it'll just work this time.
How was it meeting Jensen?
Security would tell us to leave and Jensen would go, no. And we would talk, like each individual group, we talked for like 3 to 5 minutes. This girl in my group, she's wearing a shirt in like cursive font that's never merge, always rebase. He thought that was awesome. So yeah, I would say we're good friends now from that 5-minute conversation.
ChatGPT dropped and every college student had AI super genius in their pocket, a cheat code for all classes. How did these impact the way that you learned?
AI blowing up. I was kind of skeptical. I stayed very far away from it for a long time to keep it separate from learning. I'm worried that it would offload my thinking. I sort of took my time.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Invited Abe. As always, I am your host, Abe, and enjoy this conversation with student extraordinaire Dylan Vidal. Have fun. Hey Dylan, nice to see you again.
What's up, Abe? How's it going?
You doing? How was your hackathon?
Yeah, I just woke up from a 15-hour hibernation, but I was up for 36 hours prior to that, so it kind of balanced out.
Was this a hackathon that you hosted?
No, I was hacking in this one.
Okay. How many hackathons have you competed in so far?
That was my 9th just now. So actually 9 for 9. So I'm happy to keep that number going. I was very worried yesterday, but we got it. Still strong.
Oh, you won?
Yep.
Oh, impressive guy. One thing I want to talk to you about is, and we talked briefly, but you were in high school when COVID hit. Is that correct?
It hit my 3rd quarter of my freshman year because it came in March.
Oh, so freshman.
I did get 3 quarters in person in high school. And
That's
then
crazy.
That was pretty much it until junior year is when I got back. That's kind of when things started opening up again. But what was interesting to note for my personal experience is I grew up in South Florida, and there's a program essentially where you could just not do the last 2 years of your high school and just do community college instead. So that's actually what I ended up doing, which is really funny to me because I basically didn't have high school because I had 3 months my freshman year and I came back and I was at community. So yeah, COVID was but yeah, I got a good 3 quarters in of my freshman year before that happened in March.
That's crazy. So high school, COVID hit for you, right? In college, ChatGPT dropped and every college student had like an AI super genius in their pocket, a cheat code for pretty much all classes. Like, how did these two things impact the way that you learned, right? Like, these are big, massive moments that you experience in a course of 3 years, really.
Yeah, there's been a lot of change in my lifetime. I always joke that it's kind of crazy that I'm only like 21 and I can say back in my day and it's like 4 years ago, but there's enough fluctuation that has happened for that to be a real statement. COVID was interesting. I think COVID started a really big shift for me and a lot of people of digital learning, just in general, right? Moving away from maybe the traditional textbook style and more of the YouTube video style, maybe more of the, I went through so many Khan Academy videos over COVID and OChem tutor because I was in AP Chem. It was definitely a big shift towards a lot of digital stuff, which I find really interesting that, honestly, I don't really have too much to say on COVID. It was very much a blip for me in high school. And it kind of ended up working out for me, like I said, kind of just moving on and just going to CC. I kind of just put it and kind of just left it. But it was a really big change, specifically concerning social interaction was my biggest thing. I grew up a very antisocial person, actually, which I
would not believe that.
I get that same reaction. And really what the whole COVID thing brought it even worse to a point where before it was like just a moderate amount of antisocial where I was like, this is fine, not something I need to work on. But then COVID came and that was a really big wake up for me once I started getting back in person to be like, this is something you need to work on and really nail. So that was a big priority of mine in university. And it was actually a really big reason why I joined KnightHacks, which I'm sure we'll talk about a bit later. As for the whole LLMs and AI blowing up, I remember it only really started occurring to me my freshman year of university. This was around 2023. I know GPT had been circling around for a while, but this was maybe like 3 to 6 months before they hit their kind of crazy, what was it, like something million users in a month or something.
Yeah.
And I remember I was kind of skeptical, I guess would be the right term, at least back then. I stayed very far away from it for actually quite a long time, at least in the traditional education sense.
Okay.
I had a very firm high road of mine that's very, very changed, I guess, over the last, all the things that have been changing, but to keep it separate from learning, because I was very skeptical and worried that it would offload my thinking, which I've seen happen before, but I sort of took my time with it. The other thing as well is, I mean, when like GPT-3, like even before like all of the craziness came out, it actually wasn't that smart yet either. There were still some things. I mean, especially the things that I really needed help on most at that stage in my life was like some calculus and chemistry and that type of stuff, the analytical side of things, more than just a text machine. Yeah, it wasn't there. So when it introduced to me, it wasn't super big of a thing, but I remember I have a younger sister, and there would be people like in middle school using it to write their papers.
What?
And it's like, that's such a fundamental time of learning, and I can't imagine what like just general like grammar and literacy will look like in 10 years because of that. But yeah, it was such a unique thing to navigate of where do you put your boundary? Where do you draw that line? And what actually is it useful and not useful for? Those are so many questions that students had, that peers had, teachers, me, like curriculum. Yeah, it was crazy.
You're still in college and or university. Have you already seen a shift in how like the professors or the academia is sort of looking at it when it comes to teaching?
So I wish I saw a different direction. Honestly, I don't fully agree with where it's been right now, but a lot of what I've seen changing is there'll be an AI policy on the syllabus. And a year ago, it would say, absolutely not. None, zero, period. And I guess very quickly they realized that's an impossible task to do.
Yeah.
You can't do that, right? That is impossible. Just like, I mean, there's been no cheating clauses on syllabus for forever, but someone will always be tempted to try.
Yeah.
It's just, this was such a accessible, broad way of doing so that has never existed like this scale before. So that was 2 years ago, sorry.
Yeah.
And then about a year ago, I think the first time I saw this was actually spring 24. Yeah, it was exactly a year from today, roughly. It said, you are allowed to use AI, but you must cite it like it's a paper. So if you're going to use it, in your code, in your documentation, you need to cite exactly which model you used. You need to go online and look up at this current moment what its knowledge base is. And I was like, wow, they understand what a knowledge base is and how LLMs work like that. So I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. Like, hats off to that. And then more recently, in the last maybe 3 to 4 months, this is actually really recent, they updated that to where it's not just citing it. And eventually the university released the actual citing handbook that you have to use. And it's just, you have to upload the whole chat history. You have to do exactly what model it is. You also have to show, like, how sometimes they have like the in-memory like facts about you.
Wow.
Sometimes they ask you to put those as well to see how to influence things. And then you have to write like a 3-paragraph synopsis of analyzing how it helped, how you think it might have hurt you, why you should used it versus not. Yeah. At that point, it's not worth people time to cite it anymore. And now we're just back to people doing it and they're not going to cite it. And that's just kind of how it is.
It's funny that some of the homework is now, I remember growing up, it was show your work. Now you have to show your AI's work on top of your own work.
Yeah, it's very complicated being early career, being early education, still learning and having access to such a shortcut. Yeah. And because, historically, right, if there's a shortcut and people aren't talking about the negatives for it, they aren't super apparent to you, like a majority of people will take that shortcut, and that's just, I guess, human nature in my eyes, and I'll admit to doing that too. But it's one of those things where it's like, what are the consequences really? It's been interesting to ponder and think about.
And it seems that at the beginning, right, when ChatGPT came out, you probably fell on the side of like purists of, hey, let's not dive in. Let's sort of take a step back. Obviously that's changed. And I'm curious, what was sort of the first time that you interacted with ChatGPT or an LLM that you realize, okay, there's a lot of utility for me in my learning experience?
I think it was more so being really deeply involved in my tech community around, KnightHacks at UCF. And it's kind of an inverse, not so much seeing it as utility for me, but seeing it fail for others. And I'll walk through that. It's going to sound a little weird, but I realize that it is a tool just like any other tool, and it's not a magic bullet. And seeing how it can fail goes to show that it's not just completely outsourcing me, right? That there's still methods where you still have to think, and there are so many different techniques to properly utilize these tools that I've learned about now. And it's one of those things where it's like, you can put the same models in front of two different people and get vastly different outputs, right? So it's not at the steering wheel, I guess. It's a tool. And that was really a big thing for me of like, I think mainly my concern was, again, offloading myself and losing some individuality and kind of dulling myself out. So I didn't want to do that, right? My whole ethos is, I'm in school. I'm here to learn. And, I'm not here to just pay for the class credit, let the LLM take it, and just walk out with a degree, right? Which would be very easy to do, right? But I wanted to get my money's worth. I wanted to learn. I wanted to, feel capable, right? And be capable. And so with that, I remember the first time I really started working with it. This is when it was a little more mainstream. There's a lot of YouTube content on it, and I would just listen to various different, tech YouTubers and podcasts just talk about it. And the realization I made was that so long as you are making the conscious effort and disciplined effort to do your best to understand what is being done on your behalf, then it's really not super duper drastic. And so my first time really like nailing down and using it as a developer, I had started building applications with it very early on. My very first hackathon project I did 2 months into my freshman year, which is when I was still skeptical of like using it. I had built an application that had a GPT 3.5 API call and used AI and stuff like that. So I wasn't afraid of or I didn't dislike it. It's just when I wanted to use it, right? So, but when I started using it really myself for helping me with my development workflow and all of that, was the good old chat window on one tab and editor on the other. So we weren't integrated yet. It was more like a little assistant. Yeah. That's where most of it started. It was the first time I really found myself doing that. I remember it was at a hackathon again, right? Most of my revelations come from there. But anyways, we're working, and there are just bugs that I can't really find on Stack Overflow, things like that. And I remember just, what the hell? Let's try it. Let's take a shot, right? And so I remember it found some really like niche things, and I was like, oh wow, okay. And realizing that it's like a Google search that understands your intent and also the history that led you to that point. So it has a lot more understanding and all of that. So that's the way I used it for a while. It was more like a search tool, helping me debug, helping me find those really awful, like deep React render issues that I was having, like the really niche things.
The things that are very painful to look up, that the answers are, the way that I think now the term is, having a harness around the agent or whatever you're building. The way I visually see that is like when you go bowling, those little guardrails.
Yep.
Right. It's your job as a developer to put the guardrails, and, you're sort of pushing the ball. The end state, right, is, hey, hit as many pins as possible. But those guardrails, it's something you really have to put that effort in, right?
The discipline to know when to stop, when to intervene, and also not just churn something out and submit, right? You really need to have the time, the conscious effort to learn it and understand it, and not completely just crash and burn.
Yeah. And you talk about a little bit, or wrote about, I like how you put it, dropping the tutorials and just building. Can you talk a little bit more of like when you realize this is the approach for you to actually learn?
That was me. That was also my freshman year. I had spent, and actually a little bit when I was at community college. It was my
Hmm.
last semester there. So like the summer before my freshman year, when I started, actually when I realized I wanted to do tech altogether, I had no idea in high school or anything. I just kind of end of my senior year of high school. And so I would just do a ton of tutorials, like a
Mm.
ton of them. And I remember feeling very frustrated because I did all of them, and really instead of learning it, I was just a great copy paster. Like I would just look at what they would
Nice.
do and like why they were typing it on the terminal. Like I would literally follow their exact keystrokes and just hit enter. And I'm like, oh my goodness, it works. I figured out how to do this. And that
Hmm.
was so incredible to me. And then it was again, it was hackathons that made me realize that that's not a very good way to do things, because then uh, when I want to build something that I want to build and not a God, what was the first big tutorial I did? I followed a lot of Josh tried coding tutorials.
Mm.
Like yeah,
Okay.
this one was like you could upload a PDF and it'll just rag store it and then you retrieve them. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. I did so many of those. And then it was a time for me to like actually build something myself. I was very frustrated, and there was a disconnect of what I thought I knew and what I knew.
Hmm.
And that was like a really big engine for imposter syndrome for me early on. That was rough. That
Yeah.
definitely hit me. And so for me, what I think AI has really enabled you to do is you can make your idea the tutorial, which has
Hmm.
been something that has been super fun and exciting to tell people, the community, and really go through it myself, where my tutorial, I have to frame it in my mind as it was a tutorial project, because if I messed up or I made trial and error, it's like, this is a tutorial. It's okay if I mess something up. But you could dump the idea into some sort of, LLM, put it in the memory, and just work through it and even ask it for a roadmap, right? Should I start with
Hmm.
the back end? Should I start with the front end? What are my different choices of tools? And maybe even asking the type of questions where it's like, okay, well, I have a Python class coming up. What type of path or Python backends are there? And, instead of opting
Yeah.
for something like Express, you'll, go for like a fast API or whatever. And so you can like build your own modular tutorial and then just slowly work it out on your own. And the art of asking questions has been my best form of learning. And you can't do that to a YouTube tutorial video.
Yeah.
You can throw a comment. Uh, that only works so well.
Yeah, yeah, and then you wait a little
Yeah.
bit, and you can't even guarantee that the answer, right?
Yep. And then you reply with a comment and wait another week. Yeah. No, it didn't work very well, right? And so I sort of, because now I'm at a point in time where I feel pretty good. I've got a
Hmm.
good understanding with where I am in my career and in my
Yeah.
community. And people ask me for advice on these type of things now, which is crazy still for me to wrap my head around. But
Hmm.
I sort of, make a tutorial project, but not off a tutorial. Like tell yourself it's a tutorial project, and work through it as if it were one. And the other
Yeah.
super important thing is that very rarely will you actually be passionate about the project you're building in this tutorial. And you'll finish building it, and let's just say you do actually take the effort to understand it. You won't be proud of it, really. You'll be proud of the things you learned or the things that you think that you've learned, right? But you won't
Hmm.
really be proud of the project. So, and a lot of those I see when I talk to people as well, is I
Hmm.
will see like the same like 5 tutorial apps halfway done, because they'll get
Hmm.
there, they don't have the passion to complete it. And then not only do they have like that final dopamine burst, whatever it may be, because it's a tutorial project, they also can't put any of this on their resume or start building a portfolio. So
Hmm.
it's like you need to be passionate about it to keep wanting to learn it.
Yeah.
You're building your asset rather than wasting your mental energy on something unfinished that you won't really own or present in the end, that doesn't really help you, right?
No, that makes sense, and I think that's a really novel way of building and learning today that you just couldn't, right? Is really because yeah,
Yeah.
everyone has gone through that. Is you go through a tutorial, you feel accomplished, but then there's this quick decline of excitement to continue on. When you shift it and say, no, I'm gonna build this little tutorial for myself, it's very fun, right? And then you keep
Yeah.
adding and adding and adding. You did speak a little bit that, fellow students, classmates like come to you for advice. I know you're very humble about that. I know also you went to the big tech side, right, at Nvidia, and you also wrote a little bit about doubting yourself and imposter syndrome. how was it at Nvidia, and also, how was it meeting Jensen?
I'll start with the Jensen conversation because I thought it was really funny. Um, it was like there's an intern party every year where
Hmm.
Jensen comes out with a lot of the other leadership, and we just hang out essentially.
Hmm.
And so because he's big and popular and famous now, there was a photo line eventually, and it was really cool because the line was pretty big. And it was moving very slowly, and so people were just like, "Oh, like what's going on?" or whatever. And when you finally got up there, you realize why. You would take the pictures with a group of like 5 people at a time, and security would tell us to leave, and Jens would go, no, 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 and we would talk. Like each individual group, we talked for like 3 to 5 minutes, and he just kind of asked us, what are the best things about the company or whatever. And a lot of people in my group said food, and it was pretty chill. I think it was really cool that he took the time to like actually try to talk with everyone.
Yeah.
It was funny. I remember there's this girl in my group. She was wearing a shirt in like cursive font that said like "Never merge, always rebase," and like he thought that was awesome. And then we talked about merging versus rebasing as a group for like 2 minutes. It was weird, but it was pretty cool. So yeah, I would say we're good friends now from that
Yeah.
5 minute conversation. But yeah, Nvidia was a really interesting place to be at, such a big environment, especially now. Kind of all eyes are on Nvidia, really.
Mhm.
The imposter syndrome there was interesting because I kind of had like a very quick turnaround through it. It was very strong my first half, and then in the second half, I kind of realized a lot. I was very intimidated starting, and I remember that
Of
this is the
course.
fun. This summer was actually the first time which is kind of late to the game, honestly, I will admit,
Hmm.
diving into the editors with agents built in. I've been doing the good old chat window all the way up until summer 2025, right?
Hmm.
And it was because one, because of money, right? I'm a student. It's like
Yeah.
I could $20. It's like 3 dinners. So, but then I remember my first day. They gave me the whole day to do my onboarding because there were like a bajillion onboarding tasks, just like any other internship. I
Yeah.
had to watch the trainings, I had to sign the papers, I had to set up the laptop, talk to IT. I remember I installed VS Code, and day two, me and my mentor go to sit down to explore the code base and talk about my project. And I open up VS Code, and he looks at me and goes, no, no, no. We use cursor here. And I was like, whoa. I was like, what? So that was funny. So I had to go take another 3 hours, walk down to IT, get them to approve cursor and put me on the business plan. So that was a little slow start. But yeah, that was the first time I'd actually kind of opened up the whole in-editor experience.
Hmm.
Um, and so after that, um, I felt conflicted, right? Because a lot of me was like, am I going to perform the way that I should? And then Cursor came along, and it's like, okay, I just got a pretty nice boost, right? I mean,
Yeah.
like, even if I don't know what I'm doing, I
There's
can
a
like,
productivity boost there.
I can pretend I can and try to pass on the LLM work. But so that helped me a little bit, feel a little less worried. Um,
Because you also worked on something interesting there, right? It was
yes.
Kubernetes focused. How would you tell a fellow classmate what Kubernetes is, and how much do you enjoy working with Kubernetes?
Kubernetes was more so where the code ends up after you're done writing it, is the best way I would explain it to people. And so it's like where the code goes once it's done, where it goes to deploy and stuff like that. And I've also hosted a ton of personal projects up until that point, but none of them
At
were
that
at the
production
scale
scale? Yeah.
of Nvidia, right? And so it's a matter of what do you do when there's millions or more users, especially on the issue of concurrency. And then the other thing, the fun thing is, what if they live in different countries and their access policies are different? And so really it was a lot of horizontal scalability is what I was working on.
Hmm.
And microservice architecture versus a monolith architecture, splitting up each individual piece of the application into its own server that talks to each other, and then you can replicate them. It was crazy. I learned so much that summer. But yeah, it's the server side of things, hosting side, all of that type of stuff, which is something I've never worked on before, and it's also something I've never had the joy of seeing how AI performs on, because at the end of the day,
Yeah.
there is no linter or build step that an LLM can try to see if it code works, right? It's a lot of YAML. I was writing so much YAML this summer, so much plain text. And the other issue that I had with Kubernetes is all of the bugs are found at runtime. There's no like compiler or really
Hmm.
good way to check if something will work or not, which was also bad for me, but also bad for the LLM, because a lot of the times, you know, especially in the integrated editors, they'll try running tests and they'll try seeing, you know, if what they wrote is right. And there was very little room for that when it came to the land of Kubernetes.
And I think for students, as painful as it is learning Kubernetes or microservices, that information is really important, right? Obviously, it's not taught a lot. Putting things in production isn't pretty.
My curriculum doesn't even teach Git. Yeah, so Kubernetes, like, we'll get there when we get there. That's why I'm so passionate about KnightHacks, because all of the things that I've learned that have actually come up on interviews and just Git practices and all that thing, I learned from my mentor, KnightHacks, from my KnightHacks workshops, from all those type of things. So really, really big effort to make sure we do teach those things in our curriculum. Yeah.
Let's jump into KnightHacks. What exactly do you do what exactly did you do, right, when you were president of KnightHacks? How did you join? And then what was the task that you actually had to do?
So, like I said, again, we're kind of like jumping back like 30 minutes ago, but I realized that I was getting a little antisocial. And so I made it a very big effort of mine, 2 birds with 1 stone. I want to join a community, and I really want to get outside of and the 2 years of community college after COVID, I also made this effort. I did some volunteering, and that helped me break out of my shell a lot. So I was about 50% where I wanted to be at this point. I wasn't starting at 0. So I was like, all right, I'm going to join a community, and I'm going to be a part of it. I'm not going to be someone that just shows up and takes. Like, I want to be a piece of it, right? I want to be a part of it. And so I went to my first GBM. I think it was like my 10th day of school. It was like middle of the next week. And we had this meeting. I heard about these crazy things called hackathons. I learned about what tech was. I learned about that internships were even a thing, and that honestly, we were getting to a point where they're almost a necessity, a requirement, right? And so I learned all of these crazy things. I'm like, wow. And then at the end, they were like, oh, we're doing a Menchie's partial proceeds. And so I was like, huh, interesting. And this random person, what was that?
What was that? A Menchie's?
Yeah, Menchie's partial proceeds. So it's an event where we all go eat at Menchie's, right? So we went there, and I was just walking out, and these like 3 people walk up to me, and they're like, you have a car? I was like, yeah. And they're like, can you take us? And I was like, sure, why not? And so I just made these friends. Like, it's something I never would have done. And, you know, I still talk to them now. We went to Menchie's. I hung out with them. It was a great time. And at that point, I was like, I'm going to be a part of this community. So I went for my freshman year. Remember, and we had a way to track what events you went to. I went to every single KnightHacks event my freshman year except 2, one of which I was sick with COVID, and the other was my sister's birthday. So I used that in elections thereafter. KnightHacks leadership's all done with elections. UCF forces us to. And so at that point, people recognize me, right? I mean, if they've ever been to a single event, I've been there with them, unless it was the unlucky 2 of like 100 where I wasn't there. And so I ended up getting elected secretary at first. 4 months later, president stepped down. I ran up again, and I was president. So if you count it, I was the first freshman president, technically, if you count the timing of that. But yeah,
I count it.
I count it too. I let people know.
I count it. I'll tell everyone I know. I'll tell my mom too.
But yeah, so from there, oh wow, that first year. So I was president for 2 years. The duration of my sophomore year, and then all the way up until actually 2 weeks ago, as no longer president. But it was a good 2-year run. I did everything. One thing about this club is that the higher up you go, the bigger your scope gets. Which yes, that is normally how it goes. But it's not a bureaucratic ordering system either. Right? You are delegating, but that's half of it is delegating. The other half is actually doing everything. So I never thought I would have to open up Canva and make like a social media post. That's something I never thought I would ever have to do. Or, you know, learning how like Instagram algorithms work for our outreach team. But I kind of just did a bit of everything. But the end goal of what the club, and then therefore my role as president, was, our mission is 2 things. One, and this one's verbatim, bridge the gap between the classroom and the industry. And 2, help early stage technologists overcome imposter syndrome. So those are like our two big things. And so the club side of things, which is what we do year round, is workshops, we do socials, mentorship, We do projects programs to build things with other people. We pair you up and you guys can do a project. And then the other really big thing is the hackathon. So I got to run 2 hackathons. It was KnightHacks 7 and KnightHacks 8. At this point in time when I joined the community in my freshman year, there were maybe like 30 consistently active members. And I thought it could be so much more than that. KnightHacks 6, which was the one before me, had 500 people. Me and my team were able to boost up to 600. So that was a pretty nice celebration for us. And then 8 recently, we had 1,024. Yeah. So that was awesome.
24.
Yeah. And so yeah, it was an upward trajectory. I had to learn a lot about people management stuff. One thing that I actually didn't like about President was I was doing a lot less coding and a lot more politicking, which is why I'm now KnightHacks' dev lead. So I'm doing dev stuff again for KnightHacks, but that really did break me out of my shell. Let me tell you. And I attribute a lot of that. I couldn't tell when I say people I was antisocial. It's all from KnightHacks, all of it. Having to just
you sped run essentially.
Yes. It was a very exponential thing where it's like I was slowly getting better and better, and then the KnightHacks thing happened, and it was just straight up like it was a very sudden shift for me, kind of out of necessity. But I knew that that's exactly what the position would come with. I knew that it would force me to do that, and I knew that I could survive that. I could, work with that. It would be like a catalyst for me. So that's exactly why I did it. Yeah.
Like looking back, maybe when you were in high school, right before COVID, would you have imagined yourself in such a role a few years later?
No, I mean, I wouldn't even imagine myself in tech. My story into tech is a little bit funny.
Yeah. How did you get
I
into
brought
tech?
it up within my MLH Top 50 interview, which is up. I had no idea I was going to get into tech. My dad is a fireman, and he really loves being a fireman. He owes his life to that job, and he wanted me to do it too. He wanted to share that with me, right?
Yeah.
And so he told me a lot. We're going to get you ready for that. He had a plan set up for me, and I was super happy to, have him care that much to do all of that for me, but it was when it was up until the point where I actually had to get there, and we were talking about like, we're getting ready for the camp and the training and then the EMS, and we're talking about where to go to, and I was just like, I didn't know if it was me, right? And so I told him that. I was like, okay, I'll be honest, right? I don't know if this is for me. And he wasn't upset or anything. He's perfectly fine with it. And he was just like, well, if you're not this, then you need to know what you are, right? You need to find something because you're going to be going to college in a year.
Yeah.
You want to have an answer soon. And so I just sat there. I took a career aptitude test online. CS was the top choice. I was like, I like video games. I like computers. And so I jumped into it, which honestly is not a very good way to do things. But what was the right choice for me was that summer I found, I forget which one of the random boot camps it was. I don't know if it was Codemy or is it Udemy now? I don't know. But I opened up one of those where they have the HTML, CSS, JavaScript editor on the left and the live update on the right. And for me, what totally hooked me was how, I'm a very impatient person. It was how immediately I saw my results. I would add a div and it was there. I would apply the style change and it was there. And immediately just like some like neural pathway like clicked or something, but I was like locked. I was like, this is so cool. And so I learned about all the different types of programs. I spent my whole summer just looking up stuff, right? Like I remember I wanted to learn like every programming language because I thought it would make me a good engineer. Like I had a list of what order I wanted to start learning it. I had like Ruby on there, I think. I don't know what I was doing. I wanted to learn everything, right?
Hey, I like Ruby. Okay, don't make fun of Ruby.
I haven't gotten there yet, but I just had these crazy ambitions, and that was
so you just dove into the deep end,
just
almost blind, right?
Exactly, yeah. Because I did that one like little HTML, CSS thing. This was also around the time when those reels of just day of the life of a XYZ intern, and they work for like 2 hours and play ping pong the other 6. And I was like, this sounds pretty nice.
Yeah, that's a really good marketing. I mean, obviously, I don't think that's true.
No, but it was around that time too, so that kind of helped. I showed that to my dad, and that helped him. He's like, oh, you're going to have a comfortable life, So he was a little happier with my decision too, and so I kind of just jumped straight into it.
That's funny.
So I wouldn't even have imagined tech, period.
Yeah, my dad, he wasn't a fireman, but he was or he still is a locksmith. And the one thing he asked me is like, try to find a job where you could have air condition, because he would always have to drive around, right, and always be outside. And then when I sort of one time gave him a tour of the Google office, he's like, this is I just asked for air condition, the food, the massage, like all that stuff. Like it blew his mind that companies like that exist where they invest so much in their people.
Yeah. Yeah, I showed my dad the green team food, the Nvidia food, and yeah, it was pretty much the same response. He's like, "What?" But yeah, cool. I didn't even know tech, and so I guess that was also one of the reasons why I was so eager and it is crazy that this is how kind of tech is. It's very fast, it's very competitive. I thought I was behind. Like I thought I was behind by being at zero at the point in your career where you should be at zero, starting college.
Yeah,
which was a crazy experience. I meet friends, and it's also my favorite story about imposter syndrome. I'll actually go into it now because we were just on it. Me and my friend Leo, and he's a very close friend of mine. We're still friends. We just won that hackathon last weekend together.
Shout out Leo.
Shout out Leo. I met him at KnightHacks that first week at that Metchie's GBI. Leo's so... He got his first laptop at 14, and instead of booting up Overwatch like I did, he downloaded VS Code and started coding. And I'm like, that's crazy. And by the time we met freshman year, he had recreated, what was it, Minesweeper in raw C. Like he did the GUI in Sweet. Like, okay. And I'm like in C. And I'm like, this guy's crazy. Like, what's going on? And we would work together for another 2 years. I think every hackathon project I've done has been with him, but every single one of them has been with him. And about a year and a half into knowing each other, like start of our sophomore year, it was just a conversation of he's like, dude, like you're so cracked. Like sometimes it's like, how am I going to keep up? And I looked at him, I'm like, I've been thinking like the exact same thing about you for like the last year and a half, right? And I love saying that story in KnightHacks because I think the biggest thing in tech, why imposter syndrome feels especially prevalent, is since there are so many things to know, one person can be really deep and knowledgeable on path A, and the other can be really knowledgeable on path B. But person A thinks, oh, I don't know as much as this guy does. And then the other person thinks the same thing about the other person. There's just so many niches, there's so many tools, there's so many pieces of tech that you'll always focus on what someone else has that you don't, rather than focusing on what you have that they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you are right. That moment, which is pretty funny, and it happens over and over again in tech, probably in many industries, is that Spider-Man meme where people are, they're pointing at each other like, oh, you are like me. And you also have these thoughts in the back of your head telling you that you're not good enough, or, you're not at pace to your peers.
Yeah. And that's a lot of what helped me come to terms in Nvidia as well. It was really funny because I remember there was like, so my team had this one guy that was like the resident Kubernetes Helm crazy cloud guy. It was one dude.
Yeah.
And then he recently, a month before I got there, moved to another team. So they had no, like everyone knew of it loosely, right? Like the understanding of what it is, what it does, what it serves, some of the syntax, but wasn't really like really in on that. And it was funny. They gave me his contact and I would reach out to him because he was just at another team in NVIDIA. He was still in NVIDIA. And I realized again that even like my mentors and my managers, I was intimidated by the pace and what everyone knew. But even I, as an intern, had domain knowledge and knew of things that they didn't. And then I started to feel a little more like, like we're all capable people. We're here for a reason. We're working on these things together. Stop comparing the things that I don't know versus what they don't know, and start comparing things I know, versus what they know, rather than the gaps, right? And so that was very poorly said, but
no. I love it. That's the best soundbite.
Yeah. So
what I know is important versus what you know that I know.
Yeah, rather than what we don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's also why I think that me and Leo were such good hackathon teammates, because we would cover each other's bases, and rather than feeling intimidated by what we don't know, we became enabled to know that we can help in a place where others don't know.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was a fun kind of shift. And I preach that all the time in KnightHacks when it comes to school and stuff, but I didn't think it at NVIDIA until I realized it's just like that. It's this again, like I had to piece those together.
Yeah. And one thing I want to talk to you about as well is you are probably physically located in the contiguous United States as far away from the Bay Area as possible,
Yeah.
right? Probably universities in Maine are the only ones further than you guys.
Yeah.
Like, how does the University of Central Florida stay up to date and keep up?
So the thing about Florida that's beautiful is the tech community that isn't industry, right? Like the people learning. And in Florida, basically every major university holds their own hackathon. And we go to them. We all carpool, and everyone from Florida will go to UF for 1 weekend. And then everyone from Florida will go to UCF, and then we'll go to FIU, and then USF. Like, we're all over Florida. And all of the organizations at these respective schools are great at bringing the industry to us 1 weekend at a time, with our sponsors, with the workshops that they hold, with the events, with the opportunities to network with people, right? All of them have career fairs. And you can almost see a glimpse, a way in, but also what it takes to get into that crowd and that scene, which has just been, I mean, that's what all of these communities are about, and communities like KnightHacks. And unfortunately, I don't think curriculum is the enabler right now. What I will say is that UCF in particular does a very good job of recognizing this, that they know that there are just things that only students will get and only students will know. And UCF has done a great job of enabling communities like KnightHacks to continue to do what they do, which I'm always very grateful of. And so it's hard to keep a curriculum at a pace that goes fast like that.
Yeah. I mean, you could see it in the code you write, right? The hackathons you did just 2 years ago. You probably look at the code or the demo itself, and you're like, wow, I could make that now in a 10th. The other day I looked up Lovable.dev's first demo that they did in 2023.
Oh, wow.
You genuinely could remake that with Claude Code, Gemini CLI, like anything, probably in an hour, right? Back then, that demo blew people's mind. Now it's like, oh, that's cute, right?
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see students make in a hackathon?
Oh, I'll talk about in hackathon and in class because it's a very it's an issue in the way that they align approaching the models and just having AI at their fingertips. I feel like it's just a matter of trust and oversight. You need to have less trust and more oversight. And well, I'll see it a lot where, I guess in my brain, like, building in general or learning in general is there's like the input step where you take everything in. There's the process step where not only do you learn the things, but you figure out how to shape them and mold them into what you're trying to do. And then the output step. And I just feel like the processing step can very easily just disappear. Like, you can go to the internet and say, I want these tools. I know that I want them because the application demands such and such. And this is what we want in the end. And really just that middle shot, just the one shot mindset of looks good enough to me. And a lot of the times, if you're learning new technologies, it's hard to look through those hundreds and hundreds of lines that just dumped out in 10 seconds and just think, okay, let's review this. Let's actually go through this together. And what I've seen happen at hackathon projects, they'll try to vibe code it out for an hour. And like, I'm talking like pure vibes. Like, when things don't work, they don't look at the code. They explain what the error is and just go straight back to it, which that's not a terrible thing. But in the case of the hackathon, you're under limited time. Like, you really need to be on the A game. And so they'll do that for like an hour and it won't work. And the prompts aren't getting any better. So they will revert to a commit from an hour ago and just start vibing again and just do the same thing and hope that this time the context window is different. You know, LLMs are non-deterministic, right? Maybe it'll just work this time, and they'll go and they'll do it again. And then they'll revert to a commit from an hour ago, and they'll keep doing this. And instead of spending it on their third attempt, right? You're 3 hours deep with no results. That could have been 3 hours of you learning the things it's spitting out and actually finding the error. Because sometimes it's like working with an LLM's like communicating to a person in industry. If you're not fully like descriptive of what you want and it doesn't know what you want, it will go very, very deep into making a mistake. And it's not really making a mistake. It just doesn't understand what it is you want. And by reviewing the code, you can look at it and be like, oh, I'm trying to think of a bad example, but you know, maybe it's just trying to do it on video and not images, whatever it is you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And then when you upload an image, it blows up because it's expecting a video, and the error handling, like you could just look in the code and figure that out. And you know, it's just, and it's so crazy just watching them. Like they ask me for help, I'm like, oh, this doesn't work, and I'll just watch them revert the commit and just delete everything like it's second nature. And I'm like, we could have salvaged that. And they're like, but it wasn't working. We'll just try again. And like, no stash, nothing. Just gone. Just disappears.
Like what you said, right? You got into tech because of that instant gratification, right? Of I write code on one screen, I see it populate on the other. The double-edged sword side, right, is when it doesn't work, you're like, oh, just delete it and start over.
Yeah, and the reason is that is of the mindset that AI will get it right eventually in one shot without me any input needed from me.
Mm-hmm.
And that,
I mean, we all fall into that. I've fell into
and
that.
I have too before.
Humans,
and I understand where it's coming from.
Yeah.
But I guess it's just some people that I've seen don't have that realization on their own yet, which is dangerous. It's unfortunate, and that's why I'm happy that we have a community, right? Tribal knowledge of just being able to tell each other that, like, hey, we've seen this, and this is how you should approach it differently. This is always a huge conversation in like our mentorship program for KnightHacks, just that in general. But yeah, that's a very big mistake that I see happen a lot, is just too much trust, not enough oversight, and no effort really in some cases, like zero, to actually understand what it's doing, because your trust is high enough where I don't need to. It's fine. And while like, and that's especially harmful, I feel like, in early career, in the stage, in the community that I'm a part of, right? Especially it's like, that's the other thing that I've seen people do too. I am still, and like to this day, very, very, very strict about not using LLMs during homework assignments and things that I know I don't know, because what happens when you get to the paper exam? You're done. Like you are very much setting yourself up for failure, and you will see so many people with very high homework grades and terrible test grades, and then you open up the repo for the homework they submitted, and there's emojis in it. Who types and puts emojis in their print statements? I don't know. I know a few people, none of them are human, but like, yeah. So, yeah.
You get what you put in at the end of the day.
Exactly. Right? Exactly. And that's always the issue historically with just the shortcut mindset.
Yeah, no, I like that. As much as you try to learn, through university, right, you also leverage the community that you're building, right, at KnightHacks, to like learn as a group. This space is just moving way too quick to do it alone. I am curious, like, what are you thinking? I know you're junior, so just a few more years. Like, what are you thinking out of college? What are your goals? Are you thinking of moving to the Bay Area? Do you want to stay in Florida?
Yeah, as much as I love what Florida's provided for me, I don't know if I see my future here, in full honesty.
Yeah.
I think with the
I actually, but before you answer, I actually tell a lot of students your story of why, because the number one question is like, should I move to the Bay? And I feel in the Bay, you have opportunities just through osmosis, just by existing. Case in point,
crazy.
You came to a dinner. You were episode 1 of Google Cloud's AI Agent Bake Off. And every single time we do a dinner with the guests and the show and everyone involved. And you were just there. Like, I don't know how far you were. I think in 15 minutes, we told you like, hey, we're going to have a dinner. I don't know if you're still in the Bay Area. And you came and had dinner with us. Yeah. Which is, and I'm pretty sure you've had many moments like that in the Bay that are just hard to get anywhere else.
We always joke, KnightHacks, that whenever we have a problem or like a struggle, especially when it comes to sponsorship or connections, we're like, man, another day where if we were in the Bay Area, it would just be, problem would just be solved. Like, if we could just pick up UCF and just drop it in the Bay, like, we would have the craziest hackathon ever. Like, our team is very good passion, but then just sometimes just like, oh, but there's really nothing going on in Orlando. We've heard that multiple times. We've heard multiple times companies just say no because of location. And they say, we'll keep in touch. And if you do anything elsewhere, a little closer to home or with a little more going on, then, and it's crazy how that is, but I understand. I
Yeah.
get it. And that's a part of the reason why, you know, I feel like, this the second stage of my life will probably not be in Florida.
Uh-huh.
Um, as of right now, pretty lined up and set to probably move out there to work full time with
Okay.
Nvidia after graduation's done. Um, my opinions on the Bay Area are like interesting. I feel like I don't know if I would want to live there forever. I feel like
Yeah.
there's a little too fast sometimes, but for a nice, I'll be 22 then, like that's great. Like good. Let me ride the speed. Let's go with the wave. Let's
Yeah.
go crazy and but yeah, I don't think there's too much left for me in Florida.
Hmm.
Um,
And are you thinking, going in industry or joining startups?
yeah, I don't know. Really, I'm a very I'm a person where I say yes a lot. That's kind of how I end
Nice.
up getting into these opportunities. And so, as
Hmm.
of right now, there's nothing like right in front of me where I don't think I will deviate from industry at the moment. But knowing what the Bay's like, I don't see it unlikely that there will be something I can say yes to that is
Yeah.
feasible enough, and I will say yes to it, and I'll take a different route. Um, I try not to, especially with the realization I had in early high school and then moving on, there's a point in time where I tried kind of graphing out my life a lot, and nothing is like that now. Like not a single thing. This was before I even realized I wanted to do tech, right? So
Yeah.
now I'm just like I like to have like a 1 to 2 year roadmap, and I kind of just roll with that.
Yeah.
but as now that I am a third year, the 1 to 2 roadmap is now on the edge where Florida's kind of going
Yeah.
away. But yeah,
Yeah. No, I think you also write about a little bit about weightlifting, right?
yeah.
Um, what's sort of your version of coding? Like, I'm assuming you do like progressive overload.
Yeah, that's a pretty
Okay.
good analogy for coding.
Okay. What's your progressive overload like system of learning for coding?
Oh, that's a good one. Um, and learning's changed so much in the last year.
Hmm.
Um, I think a lot of what learning is now, specifically with code, is instead of it's gonna be nerd. I'm gonna go like database talk. It's gonna be a database analogy. Instead of storing a bunch of the actual data, right? You're storing a bunch of foreign keys. You're. It's not so much an offloading thing. I guess the best thing is exposure is important. You need to know that a tool exists, but not master it anymore, right? Do I remember the syntax? Do I remember the exact methods? No clue. But
Yeah.
I have the
But you
foreign
you
keys.
you learn enough to be dangerous, enough that hey, there's a potential issue here.
Yes.
If there is, I know where to go troubleshoot it, right? But you don't. Mohammed Farouk, who I think I had in episode one,
Yeah.
he said the year of like we don't have to learn syntax, like you don't have to dive deep into it anymore, right?
Yeah.
Which I
It's
think
more
is
so understand it conceptually and less
hmm
syntactically, which has
yeah.
just been so interesting and different.
Hmm.
And I think that's where a lot of the velocity comes from because it's easier to understand in code what something does, but not exactly the line by line how it does it,
Hmm.
right? And so, yeah, it's really been interesting. And I guess the best way I look at it is the foreign key approach. It's more so conceptual understanding and exposure, and then access to wherever we can for the syntax and the coding part of things, the documentation, really just understanding things at a conceptual level. Um, and that's honestly a lot of what that Kubernetes learning was. It was just a bunch of Lego pieces, right? You got to figure out what
Yeah.
each Lego piece does. But then when it comes to really getting that together, a lot of pulling up the docs, fact checking the LLM, making sure that it's not going crazy. I,
Well, actually, one question that you made me think of is, there was a time, 2024-ish maybe, where you would hear maybe some tech influencers or some folks mention that like the age of going to school for a CS degree isn't worth it. What's your take on that?
oh, wow. I've heard that one a lot too. Um,
Yeah.
I think the degree is more about whether or not the CS classes that I take are applicable. It still teaches me how to learn. It's the
Hmm.
process of learning how to learn that I think is one of the most valuable things that any degree will teach you. Right? It is a institutionalized, formatted, structured, disciplined way for you to learn how to learn. And I think the curriculum helps me really build, and most people build, the intuition behind learning, even if the classes aren't 100% applicable to what it
Yeah.
is we should be knowing. And I think that's been valuable. And then the other thing is, when you go to university, you have access to a network that you wouldn't otherwise.
Yeah.
Being a some internships, I mean, most of them now, honestly, past like what 2022 or 2023, the boot camps don't fly that much anymore. The self-taught doesn't fly that much anymore. Just having the trust of a university will very much change the way things work out.
Hmm.
And so it's not so much the curriculum why university matters. I still think the university education still very much matters. So there's
Hmm.
still a competitive edge to going to university.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing was the learning how to learn and the network that you get access to. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the things that I've gotten up to wouldn't have happened otherwise. I mean, like, even so, let's talk about how I probably ended up on the Bake Off, right?
Yeah.
I Hackathon. It was an MLH hackathon. You can't do that unless you're a student. It's a network for university students, right? Went to that hackathon, won, met Paige Bailey, got the attention of Google DeepMind. We did the whole pitch for that project, and
Yeah.
MLH put us in on the talent pool for that, and then I got that opportunity. Like, all steps of that, I don't think would have happened if not for being a university student and
That's
having
very,
access to the right people.
yeah. And I think seeing it from the other side as someone in industry. Now, I don't really work with communities. I do it for fun. My core job is a customer engineer, so it's more sales. But I remember I was working with our marketing team, and someone said, "Hey, we need people from Shell Hacks. Like, we need Googlers to like attend. They need help." And then I saw who was asking for that help, and it was your organization. I was like, "Oh, the tech community. Although we are miles apart, coast to coast, literally, it's funny that we still, um, you know, had that connection like 3 months after we filmed like the first episode together.
Yeah, and
You know,
that's
because I
really
did not expect that at all, and I was like, "Oh, cool."
yeah. It was funny because I know Daniel and Adrian were all a part of that too.
Yeah,
Going
yeah.
back and forth with Mariana. Yeah, it was pretty funny.
And it was cool because then I think that's the thing I've learned from you, and that I like looking back at my time at university is like, oh, community building is such an important skill and thing to do because you really don't know when the relationships you're building, right, um, will benefit you. Like in the long term, like you'd be surprised how many things sort of pop up just because you helped someone out or you taught someone something. Going back a little bit to what I was going to try to say is that like Google Cloud, right? We need people like you and your organization because at scale, it's so hard to manage all these little communities, right?
Yeah,
And I do think that's maybe something different now that maybe in the past wasn't as important, maybe, or maybe not looked into as much during those times because a lot of startups, a lot of companies, it's much easier to build these companies now, but they still need a lot of help in building traction and outreach and
yeah,
like things that you guys are doing at Shell Hacks, really help provide that medium, right? To just get in front of builders.
yeah. It's a good time, and actually, Shell Hacks is the FIU community, so it's cool to know that there's multiple of them as well, right? So they're down at Shell Hacks, we're KnightHacks. There's Swamp Hacks at UF. There's Hack USF at USF, and they're kind of everywhere. And I think Florida is because I'm pretty deep in the MLH network. I've talked with a
Yeah.
lot of organizers and all that, and Florida is a very rich state in hackathons. We
Hmm.
have not only a lot of them, but most of them are big sized, and they also are very collaborative in the sense of we support each other by showing up to each other's events and bouncing all around Florida, which I
Yeah.
think is just super cool.
Yeah, it is unique because it's a strong community at the university level, but still a strong community at the state level, which
Yeah,
is, you see some of that in California, but I wouldn't say it's that intense.
that's the biggest thing that I felt in my time in the Bay is there are a lot of communities that are very tight amongst themselves,
Hmm.
but the Bay's a little like it's a little competitive. It's a little
A little?
cutthroat. Yeah. No. That definitely was an understatement. But that I don't think succeeding is a zero sum game. And I
Yeah.
don't think that for one person to succeed, another person inherently has to lose, right?
Hmm.
Like I don't believe in that, and I feel like that sometimes the Bay Area feels like that a little, um, which is why it's such a competitive and
Yeah.
flourishing place. Don't get me wrong; that's a lot of what competition inspires excellence, and that makes innovations. Um, but sometimes I like a breather from that. Sometimes that part of it is a little bit much for me, which is why I mentioned previously about maybe not being there forever. But
Hmm.
yeah, very
Yeah.
busy.
I'm curious. I know you mentioned, college, being a college student, I was there, right? You can't really spend a lot on these tools. But if money wasn't a problem, let's say you had $500 a month to spend on the ideal tech stack for you, what would you use?
Oh, that's
Like
such
the
a
way I see it, there's CLI, right? There's IDEs and even background workers.
yeah. I So I will say once I got done with Nvidia and I was put on Cursor, I found out there's a student plan, and that's now my
Go to.
my environment of choice. So I do like the IDE breakdown. I haven't tried any of the CLI stuff, but
Hmm.
all of my friends are talking about. I believe it's Codex because if you have a GPT Pro web UI, you get the Codex
Mm.
unlimited for free. So they're like, oh, I can cancel one of my subscriptions and go to Codex. And I was like, I don't know. I haven't experimented with the CLI as much, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I said, the last year has been way more politic than coding. A lot of raising sponsors,
Yeah.
telling the university that they need to give me a ballroom, or we're not going to bring them $70,000 worth of sponsors. I've just a lot of yapping, a lot of talking and emailing and that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to be dev lead now, and actually, it's very funny you talk about Kubernetes. I just did a whole kind of like a architecture migration because our web stuff sucked. But yeah, now I'm getting to do code stuff again, which I'm happy about. Like this is great. Um, I don't really have much to say on that, honestly. I haven't done as much exploring as I'd like,
Hmm.
um, just because of what I was held up doing. But
Yeah.
not anymore as of 2 weeks ago, which has been. It's funny that I call the dev lead stuff my retirement, but it really does feel like it feels like such a big break.
No, that's perfect. Well, I think, Dylan, we could leave it at that. I hope you enjoy your retirement. I hope, congrats again on the hackathon. Um, really fun to chat with you. And, I hope I'm really also excited to just follow your career. So I'll make sure to stay in touch.
Awesome, yeah, it's been great talking and always good to catch up.
Yeah. We'll talk soon. Take care,
All right,
Dylan.
later.